Dr. Jeff Spencer, Champion Maker here, and I want to share with you if a person's going to quit in the pursuit of a goal, this is where they're going to quit. So please listen up so you know how to recognize it and avoid it. And that period that's part of any goal is what I call the daily grind. And that's that place in any goal achievement where day after day you're showing up faithfully, doing everything necessary, and you just don't feel like you're getting anything back close to what you think you deserve from the time and effort that you're putting into it. And then after a while, you start to get grouchy. Your tolerance starts to drop a bit. Your enthusiasm drops a little bit. You start to think, well, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Maybe I should quit while I've got at least something left. Confidence in self starts to erode. You wonder whether or not you did a good enough job in your preparation. Do you have the right plan? Do you have the right team? Those are all the things that are essentially signs and symptoms of what the daily grind is all about. But let me say this about the daily grind is that every goal of significance always has a daily grind side to it that cannot be avoided. And it's important to use those signs and symptoms that I just mentioned there as indicators that that's exactly where you are, and that's actually evidence of progress. The most important thing now is to stay in the game long enough to be able to amass the lessons and the experience necessary that we can only get from the daily grind to achieve our goal, and stay in the game long enough until one day we get up and we can believe it. Like, I do have faith now because I have the evidence that I can achieve my goal. So let's talk about what those things are that we need to do to stay in the game when we've identified that we are. And again, the objective is here is to stay in the game long enough and continue to develop experience and insight and wisdom until such time as we get up one day and we know that we can do it. We believe that we can do it. First thing we want to do is to have metrics that we can follow that keep us in the game. And a metric is like something that can be measured. And when we look at that number, it's tangible, concrete evidence of where we are. For example, in the Tour de France, the riders know as long as they're climbing uphill and they're going 12 miles an hour, they'll get to the top of the hill. And that's all they need to do. But they need a reference point that's real, because if we don't have a reference point that's real and we turn to our brain and how we feel as an indicator of where we are, that's not a good place to go, because the mind can trick us into things that maybe quitting a little bit too soon, just before a personal breakout, which I've seen a lot. Therefore, we don't want our emotions or our feelings to necessarily dictate our choices. That's why we need metrics. And whatever that metric is for you, it could be number of phone calls, it could be number of orders, it could be time of delivery, it could be a certain job completed. Anything that's tangible that shows you that you're still in the game, make sure that you look at those first and foremost, and that you also have those established for your team as well, that helps keep them in the game while they're developing this critical mass. The second thing to do when you find yourself in the daily grind, to stay in the daily grind until you show up in belief that one particular day, is to never forget who you are. Whatever you've done in the past can always be done better, because throughout life we should be getting better. We don't necessarily get worse unless we believe it to be that and we give up and we quit, which we're not going to do here. The evidence of what we can do and what we're capable of is certainly based on past history that kind of never goes away. It's like always going to be there. But just remember that the human mind wants to take us to a place to make us think that our best work is behind us. That's a typical place where people go to, and that's not real. That's our fear-based survival instincts that are putting that in our mind, trying to convince us that that's the truth. And it isn't the truth. Our best work is always in front of us. Don't forget who you are, what you've done in the past, what your strengths are to help you stay in the game long enough to wake up that one day where you wake up in belief. Another thing that's really important to keep us in the game until we get up that day with belief when we're in the daily grind is to really celebrate the small wins. Sure, there's an overarching destination, which is goal achieved, that may be a considerable ways out there. But while we're going from where we are to that celebratory moment where the goal is achieved, we want to celebrate the small wins along the way, because those are the evidences that we're building critical mass right now in the daily grind that we need to be able to achieve ultimately the goal itself. And when we celebrate those small wins and we point them out, each and every one of those is a confirmation that we have the right team, we have the right motivation, we have the right plan, we got the right structure, and we're on the right trajectory. And never make anything so small that it's insignificant, because a lot of these small things taken cumulatively are demonstrations of what's possible, like in the macro. And then finally, staying in the game to get to that point of belief where you're now out of the daily grind is to take periodic and prescribed in advance brain relief breaks. The brain is 2% of the body's mass. It consumes 20% of the body's energy. Because it's a physical structure and it's got nerves that go from it to other organs and muscles in the body, because it's physical, it can get fatigued as well. And unless we take periodic breaks to be able to rest the brain up, then we are always at risk for making amateurish mental errors on a tired brain. And the world could do without you for 15 or 20 minutes a couple of times a day, and then get a good night sleep at night where you actually lay down and go to sleep and get up the next day refreshed. Those are mandatory parts of that. Staying in the game, trying to do more and push harder longer when we're kind of at our limit, all that does is deepen the difficulty of being able to repay back the debt, to get back to baseline, to be able to move forward without the risk of getting sick or an amateurish mental error. And when you consistently do those 4 things, that is a guaranteed trip for you to be able to get to that place where you get up that next day in belief that concludes perhaps the most difficult of all the steps in goal achievement, which is what I call the daily grind. And that's exactly what the champions do. If you'd like more information on the daily grind and the goal achievement roadmap playbook, step number 8 is solely devoted to the daily grind itself and some of the other nuances that the champions do to be able to get through that daily grind to achieve those highly aspirational goals that are part of their legacy and that which allows them to live a life of passion, purpose, productivity, and prosperity. Now, if you'd like to get an insight further into the structure and some of the nuances and the models in the Goal Achievement Roadmap, you can go to www.garmasterclass.com and you'll find some amazing resources there. In summary, every goal of aspiration is always going to have a daily grind in it. The key is to stay in the game long enough to get to a point where you get up one day and believe that you can do it. And if we believe in ourselves, we watch our metrics, we take our brain relief breaks, and we know how to stay in the game, eventually one day we'll get up and we'll be able to move forward to achieve that goal. And that's what the champions do. Remember, there's only one of you in all of creation, and there is always room at the top for the best. I look forward to seeing you next time. Onward and upward.